Joining me in the studio to tell us more is Bernard Dowley, the Equipment Officer for Folkestone's National Coastwatch Station, and John Keeble, who's the Station Manager-elect. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming in. John, what's involved in the day-to-day running of Coastwatch?
Well, the actual day-to-day running involves two persons being on watch for the AM and the PM from 10 till 2, 2 till 6 in the summer, and 10 till 1:30 till 5 o'clock in the winter.
And Bernard, what are you looking out for specifically?
The object of the NCI is to look out and monitor anybody in distress. So any vessels, any swimmers, any coast walkers, path walkers. It's anybody that appears, as far as we can work out, that needs some help. We're going to monitor them, and if we then have to go to the next stage, it's to call out the relevant agency to deliver that assistance.
And John, what sort of year has it been for marine accidents?
I would say marine accidents doesn't very often happen in our vicinity.
Oh, that's good.
But incidents do happen, and hopefully an incident is a preventable thing. But if an incident does happen, we can get the right emergency services to the right place at the right time to help with it. These happen now and again. They seem to come like buses. Nothing happens for ages, and then three of them come along together.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what have been the common ones this summer?
Normally it's people going out too far on inflatables, not wearing the right equipment when they're out on these inflatables. And Folkestone has a very funny tide system and wind system that people don't realise that until they get beyond the head. When the wind gets a grip of them, they can go quite fast in one direction and never come back the other way.
Right. And Bernard, can you explain a bit more about the tides and the winds? Because I've noticed when I go swimming at Seabrook, sometimes, depending on the wind direction, you're not really aware of the currents, but you can start at a point and then suddenly you're 100 yards one way or the other. It's quite frightening sometimes.
If you look at the Dover Straits English Channel, the tide predominantly runs either in a sort of an easterly or a westerly. Clearly, when it gets round to Dover, it starts turning up to the north. But that's the tidal flow. And when the tide is either flowing in or ebbing out, it's actually moving in the region of anything between about 1 and 2 knots per hour, which is actually quite a strong old tide.
Yeah.
And unless you are a really competent swimmer, particularly, you're actually going to have difficulties in short order time. That can be accelerated. That if you've got an incoming tide and the wind coming from the west, one is backing up the other, so you're going to go a little bit faster. Conversely, if you get tide oppose the wind, then that's when you start seeing all the big seahorses, and the waves are picking up, in excess of a metre sometimes on those occasions. And as a swimmer, that's you've got to be good to survive those sort of conditions.
Yeah. How far would you recommend that you go out before you get into these currents? Is there any minimum?
I would say that you should never go beyond your capability.
Yeah.
And you should always have someone there with you. Unless you are a really competent swimmer and you know what you're doing, there should be someone there who's either watching you or with you, looking after your stuff on the beach, so that they know what's going on. And as I said, never go beyond what you feel is your capability.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, you've got to get back as well. So,
yes. Yeah. I mean, generally, there are no signs warning you of this potential danger. I mean, the English Channel is... it sounds like a pretty dangerous place to go swimming and boating.
I think it can be made a dangerous place by people not being aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
The channel is there, and being a holiday resort, you're there to enjoy yourself. The time it gets dangerous is when people start enjoying themselves by going beyond their capability and doing things that are not safe in a coastal environment.
Yeah. And especially, Bernard, the rubber inflatables, I mean, they just skim across the sea, don't they? There's nothing underneath.
Anything that's almost sitting on the top of the surface is going to be subject to tide and wind.
Yeah.
If you look at Folkestone particularly, and I speak of a little bit of experience because I've also got a little small inflatable, and if you stay within the protection of the arm of the pier, for example, in Sunny Sands Bay,
right,
then that's reasonable. But again, you shouldn't be going out there unless you know your vessel's seaworthy. You are wearing some form of life support system, whether this is a life jacket or a buoyancy aid, and somebody knows you're going. If you look at the professionals and people like the channel swimmers, the amount of work they do before anybody gets wet would indicate the sort of level people should be looking at.
Yeah. I read an article recently that it said the most sort of careless and perhaps, throw caution to the wind group of people in the sea these days are the over 50 males. Is that in your experience?
I can't really say that comes into what we see, because we're looking at things at a distance. We know there's people on the vessels, but we can't tell the age. Right. We can tell the size, but we don't actually say how many people are on a vessel, due to the fact we cannot make sure that there are only that number of vessels. There could be a child sitting down low or something like that.
Yeah.
Age related, I don't think really comes into that, and I wouldn't like to state any statement on that.
Yeah.
It's normally the times when we have most of our problems are in the summer, when it's holiday makers are enjoying themselves and perhaps are not quite thinking in the right lines. They're thinking about enjoying themselves, and rightly so, but they are not quite thinking of sea awareness and sea safety.
Yeah, I think also in this article it said, there's over 50 men are slightly more reckless. It's the syndrome of buying a Harley Davidson. You go slightly mad when you should have done that when you were 15 or 20.
I think the syndrome is Dad could row forever, and the kids think Dad's a hero, and then Dad suddenly finds out, yes, he can row in one direction, but not the other.
You've been quite successful with signing up volunteers, haven't you?
Yes, at the moment we have 4 people that are moving forward into joining us, hopefully in the near future. They have their application forms going off. They will come back to us, and then they will join our training staff, where they will be trained on a one-to-one basis under our training staff until they feel that they are proficient to move on to the next stage, and the trainer feels they are also proficient to move on to the next stage. Our training goes forward in a one-to-one basis, with both parties feeling that when they are competent, they will move on.
Yeah. And Bernard, are there any restrictions for volunteers? Can anybody become involved?
The answer is anybody can become involved. Gender doesn't come into it. Age doesn't come into it, as long as the individual is physically and mentally fit and capable enough to do the job. Jokingly, and we say up there, because we sit up on the hill, if you can get up to the top of the hill, you're just past the medical.
Oh dear.
The only difference with this one is you retake the medical every time you go on duty.
Yeah. So
this is a case of if you're fit enough to undertake the task, and you're willing to undertake it. If I'm going to emphasise anything, it's a willingness and wanting to do the job. And want to go forward, rather than it's, there are age or gender restrictions, because there simply aren't any.
Yeah. You mentioned getting up the hill. I mean, when you were in the Martello Tower, that was another climb as well, so even fitter in those days.
The problem with the Martello Tower was there were steps inside it, and that was one of the things that it was not a very safe environment, and that is why we moved on. To add to what Bernie's just said, was what I like is that I go up there for 4 hours on watch. I'm with a person that perhaps I haven't seen for a little while. That person has a completely different outlook on life to me. So while we're watching, we're talking, and I go away thinking, I have learnt something again today, and we have done something. Perhaps nothing's happened, but we've been there.
Yes.
Yeah, and you've got 55 volunteers so far.
Yes, we have 55 volunteers who are capable of watch keeping. We have nobody in training at the moment, but as I said, there are 4 coming through. And you've got to remember, these are people that are giving their time to this country on a voluntary basis. We do not cost the country a penny in any way. The only paid member of our organisation, so I'm led to believe, is our national treasurer, so that he is outside of the organisation. Everybody else doesn't claim for travelling or anything to do with watchkeeping.
Yeah. As we move into the winter, so the nights get longer and the days shorter, does that affect your work?
These people are dedicated volunteers, and to give you some idea of what goes on, we've been open since 1998, and I don't think I can count on both hands the number of times a person hasn't got up to that watch and manned it. And I think Dover Coast Guard, when we did our 10-year celebration, backed us up on that they were surprised how many and in what conditions people get up to that watch and are willing to stand up there for 4 hours and then get down again.
Yeah, and I know you go around giving talks and you have a stand at various shows and so on. But how can local people help in any way?
I think the local people will. What is shown, how much help is given by the local people, is to finish up in the watch station we are in now. By next spring, it will come out at about £100,000.
Wow!
That has been raised by the people of Folkestone, the surrounding areas and businesses that have given their money, time, equipment to us to enable us to get where we are today. I think that states how the people of Folkestone help and how they do help. And we just hope they carry on doing so.
Oh, I'm sure they will. And Bernard, how can people find out more about what you do?
Easiest way is to come up to the station. We're open 7 days a week. I would suggest sometime after 10:30, because we've got to set the watch up, and before sort of 5:30 in the evening. Any day of the week, pop up to the hill, press the intercom button on the outside, you'll get invited in straight away. And that's the best way to find out, because you can actually see and talk to the people that are doing the task.
Yeah.
If you wanted just to have a quick look, then the next option is to go straight onto the web, and if you Google in or Yahoo in, whoever you're using, National Coastwatch Institution, that will take you to the national organisation, and from that you can actually with a drop-down menu get to Folkestone. We also do actually have our own website, ncifolkstone.org.uk. Click on those and that'll take you to our website. You can see what we're doing. It'll give you some idea how you could get involved and whether you want to. But if I'm going to say anything, and I think John will probably agree, that the personal visit is by far the best way to do it.
Yeah, a little incentive to go along there. You can look through your unbelievable binoculars.
Yes. I think people don't realise the view we've got up there. You know, France is just over the horizon and we can see them quite clearly.
Yeah.
And it all depends on what visibility you've got on the day. There's nothing much we can't see. We can see the Calais clocking, the Calais towering Calais. We can actually see the dome in Boulogne, the water tower on top of Boulogne Hill. Not perhaps in great detail, but we can see them. So that gives you some idea of what we can see within 6 miles of us.
Yeah. So if anybody's up to any mischief, you'll be watching them.
Yes, I think, as I said in the beginning, we can see most of things and we like to stop things that are going to happen before they happen. And some people, I think, don't realise that there are people up there watching and are there for them to be safe.
Yeah, you haven't nabbed these vandals on the Warren, have you?
No, not yet.
Not yet. No, I'm afraid I think they know we're up there watching.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. I know you're the station manager-elect, John, and you wanted to thank the previous station manager.
I would like, on behalf of the station, to actually take this opportunity to thank Tony for all the work he did bringing us through the times we had, and that I know Tony is still going to be an active member of our team, but I think everybody will thank him for being the station manager when he was. I've got big boots to fill, and I don't feel as if I can even climb into them at the moment. What about fill them?
Well
that's
done,
lovely.
Tony.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. That's John Keeble, station manager-elect, and Bernard Dowley, who's in charge of the equipment from the Coastwatch station at Copt Point in Folkestone.